Hey kids, howdy, welcome. It's once again time for Conscious Embodiment, Astrology, and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. We are rounding out the year. I usually don't talk about holidays, and why am I asking you this? So you don't know when Hanukkah is this year, do you?
Actually, I think it's the last day of Hanukkah today.
Yeah, did you look that up?
I did.
Fabulous. Well, okay, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, and if nothing else, happy turn of the year, because that is really what's happening energetically, even though the calendar is less interesting to me than the solar system. Happy end of what was probably the most difficult year we've ever had in advance of the year next year that's going to make this one fall into second place. We're talking about December 22nd through the 28th. Getting close to the end of the year, just a couple of little announcements. One, of course, is that on January 1st, I'm doing my Astro Overview for 2026. It's going to be quite a year, so please join me for that. There will be no global healing meditation because that January 1st is also the first Thursday, right? So I'm guiding people to the overview, and we'll resume in February. My first class hasn't really started marketing yet, but you can get your seats now for Jumpstart Your Spiritual Practice, which starts at the very end of January. That's it for announcements, and I've got a question from Ed. Ed writes, I'm learning more about astrology, and I love learning from you. I was blown away when you talked about fast and slow-moving planets and how slower orbits have more power when they move around and faster-moving things at birth are more sensitive. I was having a really hard time 2 years ago and found out that I am an Aquarius rising, yes. And Pluto moved over my ascendant last year, so that was something. It's over now, but then a friend reminded me that Pluto is now in my first house. I know you don't answer specific questions for people's charts, but I'd love it if you could talk about this thing of slowest planet, fastest point again. Thanks. Ed. And yes, I don't, but I read the whole question just because it's illustrative of what we're going to talk about. So let's start with the slowest planet wins concept. That the slower the orbit, we understand those planets to have more weight over the one that's moving just faster than it, right? So Pluto, of course, would be our most powerful cycles because of the slowness of his movement. Then Neptune, Uranus, that's the sort of order inward of the outers, then Saturn and Jupiter, and then Mars, Venus, Mercury, and the Sun. This is really for interpreting a set of transits. This is where you would put this practice into play the most. So that if, like for instance, if I'm writing about a particular time or a particular day or month, I can give the story that the planets are telling by recognizing the weighted order of depth and importance. It's kind of like this. If I were constructing a sentence where I'm going to describe energy but not quote planetary placement, I'm going to start with, blah, 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 transforming and, spiritual connection does this and sudden awakenings do that. Right? I just spoke Pluto, Neptune, Uranus in that order, which is all really interpreting astrology is I just put language into storytelling based on archetypal movement, but I know how the story goes, if you will, by favoring the slower moving planet as a more important character in the story of any given moment. So then the opposite is true in the chart itself. So once you take that breath and the map of your makeup is established, we now have a whole bunch of planets and points and angles that are the map of you based on your first breath and your latitude and longitude when we know the time. Now, the slower the orbit, the least sort of impactful a transit will be, like energetically in any given moment. So that if we'll just use the moon as an example, Actually, this is a simple way to describe this, I think. I hope. I'm going to try it. So imagine a chart, your chart, and imagine the moon moving around in a 28 and a quarter day period of time. It's going to conjunct every planet at one point or another in that 28 and a quarter days as it moves around the circle. I would then tell you that based on what day and what planet was being touched by the moon, we would understand that the faster the point in the chart, the more you're going to feel that moon conjunction energy. Meaning, moon conjuncting your Pluto will certainly trigger some depth and passion and gravitas. But the fastest moving is the rising sign, if you know your time of birth, because it's created by the spin of the earth. So that when the moon crosses your rising, that's a lunar hit that you're going to feel way more intensely than the one to Pluto. And then you can just think of like the ascending order as, the quicker the points, orbit or creation, the greater the experience. And so, because Pluto is generational in its movement and describes deep, slow changes, anybody who has Pluto crossing their rising sign then has about 20 years of the self being the source of the greatest transformation that they're going to go through. I had this. Pluto went into my first house 25 years ago, and that was quite a couple of decades from that transformation. So you can think about this in any of your houses. If you're listening to this podcast, go to your chart and see where your Aquarius house and placements are, because that's where the slowest planet is winning in your life. It's a pretty simple, quiet week in the planets. But it gives me an opportunity to talk about something that's been happening in the last week or two and will continue as all of the personal planets, one by one, move into Capricorn. So first I'm going to start with the semi-sextile. Sextile is 60 degrees, and a semi-sextile is half that, 30 degrees. It's a bona fide transit and aspect in astrology. It has meaning, but it's not an angle you're going to hear any astrologer talk about in some ways really at all, unless there's something very specific happening, kind of like what I'm going to describe today. But it's rare because it's just such a weak geometry. And my use of astrology is about navigating the bumps so that you can work with the energy and have a more conscious experience of your life. And you're not going to know about these semi-sextile hits. They're too subtle. But they have meaning, and there's an activation of Pluto in Aquarius by semi-sextile of all of the planets moving into Capricorn, because Aquarius is the next sign over, 30-degree difference. So the power of the sextile is about intimacy and two energies that are so unlike each other, they can't even function until they're 30 degrees away from each other. This isn't really astrologically accurate, but I'll use it as a good example. So if the moon hits, I sometimes jokingly say the semi-sextile is two neighbors who absolutely hate each other. But as long as you stay in your yard and I'm in my yard and we can wave and I can be nice, not falsely nice, but just I'm okay if you stay there, and you're okay if I stay here. So imagine Mars in transit, conjuncting something powerful in your chart, your moon, anything. The idea would be that Mars can't touch your moon again in any way until it's at least 30 degrees away. Any closer, and it's like that moving planet is sort of in nebulous space with regard to where it just was. And then when it gets 30 degrees away, a semi-sextile, that's when the planet Mars in this like loose equation turns around and says, hi, you stay there, I'll stay here, we are happy. Once again, no combustion between them, no change exists as a result of them relating in this. It's just a moment of intimate stasis. So now, why am I telling you all this deeply complicated geometrical shapings that I hope you're picturing in your mind? I get a lot of questions on social media about, when's it going to end? Why is this time so challenging? Someone on TikTok the other day says, what did she say? She said, I miss it when he wasn't so negative. As if I'm the one who's changed. I shouldn't have typed this in, but I said, I don't think you understand astrology. Right.
But also, I feel for this person.
Well, yes, and they are. Listen, come towards me, this person. I want to teach you how astrology really works and that it's a reflector, not a causer. I haven't gotten negative. Things have gotten heated up. And, this mirror thing, I think, is what people miss when they're like that. They don't recognize that the conflict out in the world is an exact reflection of each of us. We're each in this level of conflict. Now, some of us are in places in our life where we're handling it. It's not so destructive as others, but that's how the world works, and astrology reflects that as well. And so part of why this year and next year is going to be challenging for us at the personal level is that all the personal planets do what they do, but they interact with the outer planets and Saturn holding the space for, like, saying to us, anything you do is going to change you deeply. Right? So then in the last, lunar cycle and a half, as everybody was moving into Scorpio, the planets that did were touching all three outer planets directly, including Pluto. What's happening now is we're moving into Capricorn stellium time. Soon it'll be the solstice. And next year, the new moon in Capricorn that really starts things off again in earnest. And I think that there's something elegant that as everybody moves into Capricorn, though they will interact with both Uranus in Gemini and Neptune in Pisces, they're not going to touch Pluto, but in this 30-degree semi-sextile, which means we get a little bit of a break from the deep, profound rumblings of change for the next couple of weeks, but not for long. So Mars and the Sun did this last week, and as they both left Sagittarius, they inconjuncted Uranus and squared Saturn. I should actually say it the other way around, because first I want to say they bumped into the lessons and the breakdowns and the screeching halts. Well, then Uranus was like, let's get on another path instantly. So this week, it's all about Venus. With each entrance into Capricorn, we get another aspect of self that gets slower, more grounded, a little bit more engaged in what's the purpose of each day. That's the nature of the Capricorn mansion. And given the sort of crazy mutable fire that we're coming out of from the last lunar cycle, each passage is grounding. And I think Venus into Capricorn, because it's the emotional body, will be very helpful to us in terms of just, emotional regulation becomes easier with Venus in Capricorn. Whereas, emotional regulation, when Venus was in Sagittarius, wouldn't even be he'd be like a what? We're not dysregulated. We're just shooting arrows. We're having fun. We're learning and growing and moving. Yeah, it's a little much. And we're motion sickness from all the mutable fire. So Venus is moving into Capricorn on Wednesday. But before she does that, she's got to do what Mars and the Sun did by touching the outers. Now, we move into this week with a square from Venus to Saturn that happened at the end of last week. So there might have been like weekend squeezes or lessons or things that are, residually following you into this week in the realm of emotional like breakdowns or lessons. Today is the day that Venus hits Uranus in that sudden track change. Some people learned a thing or two about their relationship dynamics and are making a big change as we move into this week. That doesn't mean positive or negative, kids. It just means change. But sudden shifts on really around anything that relates to Venus, which is friendship, love, intimacy, artistic passion, and money. Tomorrow, Venus squares Neptune. So again, we're sort of moving through cloud fogs again, or banks of fog, or cloud. It gets confusing when Neptune's triggered, especially in a square. And then on Wednesday, we sort of move into the more grounded shift of Venus in her new sign of Capricorn for 3.5 weeks, where love language will be, I'll do things for you. I guess it's acts of service, but it's more like building you a bookshelf than bringing you some chicken soup. So, if your narrative doesn't relate to deep emotional relationship patterns, it might even just be that you're emotionally confused and that your moods are shifting rapidly, right? Venus is reflecting that all of our emotional bodies are being impacted, but just like astrology works, some people are having this like a sledgehammer and others are having it as like a thing they're looking at through a window. So besides just what I described of the outer planets holding a shape for 2 years that makes the personal planet movement more, deeply changing and revolutionarily, unstable, there's also the fact that the planets have been moving together in like a little, it's like Dorothy and the folks are going to Oz. I don't know why I'm grabbing all these silly analogies today, but that makes a difference, right? That when Mars, Venus, and Mercury, mind, body, and heart, are all in the same place, that means that when they change signs and hit the outers, it's hitting us at, mind, body, and heart at the same time. So that's why we all feel like we're being hit by trucks. Every time the personal planets do something, all three are doing something at the same time. And because they're close to the sun, that includes the sun. With these ingresses into Capricorn and the solstice on Sunday, we are now in fully the Capricorn stellium. Now, Mars, Sun, and Venus are there. Mercury will follow suit. And why this is interesting to me is, A, what I talked about earlier, that we have some level of a greater sense of groundedness once the personal planets get into the sign of Capricorn, because Saturn the rulership by Saturn slows everybody down. But also, they're not fighting with the outer planets from this mansion. And then we have our new moon in Capricorn. I don't usually go this far ahead, but this feels like a good time to point out that the first new moon of next year that happens on January 18th has all of the personal planets in Capricorn in like a perfect lineup. Actually, Venus will have slipped into Aquarius, but that's all right. She's close enough to be part of the party. That takes this idea of body, mind, heart, and spiritual body, because that's represented by the sun and the moon and their ongoing dance. We get to, at least archetypally, set intentions in January for the year ahead that is like chef's kiss, able to give us the best, most grounded, most integrated mind, body, heart movement. Now, I have to say something hyperbolic, like we've ever seen before. Now, if I was a pop astrologer, I would say, yes, everyone gets a car and a house and a this and a that. No, what you get is a sense, perhaps it's available, that your sense of self, how you walk through life, what your talk's sounding like, and how you wrap it all up in your heart will allow us to enter the most difficult year that we've ever seen on Earth with a little bit more fortitude and steadfastness ready to go. Have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show.
This week we have an email in dream from Kara, and I picked it because it has some themes of religion, which, we've been talking about, light, and we've been talking about,
Yep.
dipping into your spiritual self,
right.
and also paddle boards, which I don't think we've had before.
like in lakes?
Yeah, like your stand-up paddleboard that you go in the ocean or lake with. Okay, here we go. Dear Michael and Zoe, I had a very detailed dream this morning, and I woke up abruptly from it when my child cried out. I wanted to make sure to remember it. Part 1, so there's 2 parts. I was at some sort of beachy vacation destination. We were at a family-owned paddleboard rental facility right on the water. There was a large wooden dock, which was out back of what looked like a family home. There were a ton of people busily working, helping customers. One of the social media influencers that I follow in real life, a mom of many children who is a lot of fun but does speak quite often about her faith, ended up being in the family. I started following her when I was pregnant because she had a lot of great insights into pregnancy and childbirth, possibly important for later. For some reason, it was my job to steam her dress while she was wearing it. We spoke and we somehow got on the subject of religion, and I remember asking if it was a problem that I'm Jewish. She was very kind in response, though I don't remember what she said. There were other family members who were helping my group get set up as well. I think I had an overall realization that it was a very Christian family who ran the business. I think I steamed one of the guy's suits as well, again while he was wearing it. Okay, here's part 2. I don't remember who all was in my big travel group, but I know my husband was with me. The water was beautiful, blue, crystal clear. You could see everything under the water. We set off to start paddleboarding, which, thinking back on it now, was definitely surfing. But I had a small, clear blow-up raft that could barely hold my weight. Everyone else's seemed fine. I realized at this point that I was very pregnant, and I kept trying to stand up on my paddleboard/raft, but kept losing my balance and falling in. I had the thought that I needed a bigger paddleboard. I'm next to my husband on his board, and we notice some big waves coming towards us. The first is pretty small, and we duck under the water as it goes over our heads. We somehow know that another big one is coming. But as the small wave comes, my husband says it wasn't so bad. Then, a huge wave, miles and miles high, heads towards us. And again, we duck under. I remember thinking that it may be so big that we need to hold on to something to stay in place. There's nothing to hold on to underwater, but the wave came and went and we were fine. I think that's about when I woke up for the first time. When I fell back asleep, I just revisited the same details from the dream as a whole, and nothing new is added. Any insights would be appreciated. Love your podcast so much. Thank you both.
Wow.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot to work with here.
There's so much to work with.
Pregnancy, religion, waves.
And specifically Jewishness as it sort of relates to the sort of the influencer Christian milieu in the country right now.
That is on the rise.
I mean, this past, fall has been particularly juicy with that. Oddly, I think I want to start with the second dream.
Okay.
So I'm just going to establish that the first part feels to me to have a lot to do with both perhaps Kara's personal feelings about what it is to be religious and Jewish at this time, but also the cultural things that we're all bumping into in the United States and abroad. The whole world is having a just another Jew-hating moment.
Right.
And it's not small. So what's lovely about this second dream is that we're in someplace idyllic so that we know that whatever we did in the first dream has landed us into like the solution or the commentary, whenever there's a second dream that applies, it's got to capitulate to the first part. And so this capitulation piece has calmness, at least at the beginning, right? They're on a beautiful, the water's clear. I like that her husband's with her because that, it's not his dream, but it shows her in her integrated state, right? Because when we are partnered at that level, we move sharing life. And so a dream with your husband or wife in it might not be about the relationship, but about your wholeness and integration. And that's what this feels like to me, that whether it's wholeness and integration for Kara, it also looks to me like it's representing her and her husband on the same page.
Because it's like a comforting, supportive
he's right
presence.
there, and he's got his board. It's bigger, right? So there's this sense of, like, I've got my protector here with me, because then she finds out her raft is not so strong because it's a blow-up raft. That's interesting to me. That's like old ideas of like hot air consciousness.
Interesting.
Ugly things that are, I'm adding this, right? But clearly her support in this emotional rough rod, that's not even a term. I don't remember, I just made that up. But like, it's rough with the waves that are about to come. We're not there quite yet. But she notices that what she has to support her is flimsy. And it's flimsy because it's blow up. Blow up has to connect to intellect and air and ideas, right? That that come out of our mouths or maybe that are there in the atmosphere in the manner that I'm talking about. Or even just the idea of hot air. I'm making it hot air. She didn't say it was hot, but you get what I'm saying, that there's something about the air and air connecting to ideas that is what is making her initial support feel flimsy. Mm-hmm. It might even be about, I'm getting, yes. So if she has to blow up her paddleboard, and you can think of each of her air gusts into the paddle as old ideas that used to come out of her mouth on a regular basis that she can no longer really support herself on, she has to make a change. I'm going to say it's a change in how she uses her voice. The pregnancy says that's what's being birthed. she's birthing a new consciousness that will get her into some greater authenticity of expression or some new way of contextualizing her role as a Jew, as a wife, as a member of a very anti-Semitic world. But once she aligns with both her own masculine principle and the stability of her partnership in waking life, they are able to navigate every wave, even the ones that they imagine are going to take them out, don't. So that's the whole wrap up. Is life out there is like scary, but as long as I feel supported, know who I am, and speak up in a more masculine way, I can navigate any of the big emotional waves that might come up when, and I don't mean to be bashing this point, what it's like to be a Jew at this time. By the way, as I scroll up to look at my notes for the first half, I noticed that her child cried out, which woke her up. Mm-hmm. So that means to me that the child is participating in the dream imagery of I connect to my family, and even my child is, expressing some need for me to include, I don't know why I'm thinking her, the child, in this consciousness. So to me, this makes the whole first part of the dream very simple. It's really the same look to integrate that the second part of the dream, is describing quite well, like how to navigate rough, emotional, unstable waters, right? So any paddleboard in this case is going to be navigating the ocean. So the symbolism there in both dreams is how do we get through big emotional moments when they feel very unstable and might knock us into drowning in the overwhelm of our emotional experience. And of course, the beach is the perfect symbol of the unconscious and the consciousness are meeting and impacting each other. Now, this might be the place where I want to be extra careful. I don't want any of my preconceived judgy notions about a woman on the internet who's Christian, and I'm such a bad person. So, the influencer represents an aspirational public opinion structure, if you will, that is
interesting.
Here's how to, raise your children and do pregnancy and children in a good way that's connected and added to Christianity, because she also speaks about her faith. Mm-hmm. So then, again, without getting into what I think about this, my fantasy of this woman that I don't know who is, we lift her up as a positive image of this consciousness that drew Kara in. But it's messy because there's this Christian disconnect. How do I know? Because Kara is trying to make it look a little better. She's trying to iron the outfit to smooth out the wrinkles of the person themselves. While they're wearing the clothes, this is the funny thing, right? If she did that in life, she'd be going to jail for creating third-degree burns on two individuals. But because it's dream life, we can put together what's the impulse behind certain behaviors. The impulse behind ironing is to straighten and make more presentable. That which is evidence of things behind the scenes that crinkle shit up, right? The ipso facto isn't her dress needs ironing because she's out there in the world. It's because of what was happening when it was, shoved in a box and not her actual identity. Because influencer also suggests a level of inauthenticity simply because it's social media. So this urge to sort of straighten it all up and make it look pretty, I think is interesting, comes before she then asks the question, is this a problem? And then the guy comes later as kind of an afterthought. Is there an answer in the dream?
Answer? What do you mean?
Does the influencer answer her about, is it a problem that she's Jewish?
1 second. She was very kind, but she does not remember what she said.
Okay, kindness is good. Because this is an inner aspect of Kara. We don't want her dealing with any unkind inner processes to, come to a more integrated place. Again, because we don't know, I have to really acknowledge that I am participating in this interpretation a little bit greater because Kara's not here. And I'm going to sort of double down on that. While we don't know what she said, we do know that in the next dream, she ain't near the lady anymore. She's in a whole other place and pregnant. So I think we know that her country club doesn't accept the Jews.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.